I was helping somebody out about some family stuff. Okay. All right. Good morning. All right. If you can, go ahead and turn to John 15. And this morning, we're going to talk about the vines and the Father being the vine dresser, what all that means. So go ahead, if you can, and turn to John 15. And we'll get started right here. I can find my notes. All right. Does somebody mind reading for us John 15, verses 1 through 3 out loud for us? Yeah, of John 15, please.
I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you.
Okay, so very first thing, it's one of the I am statements of John 15. Of the Gospel of John, there are 7 of these. This is one of the latter ones. Christ says, what? I am the who? The true vine. Yep, John 15, verse 1. And so you see that I am, and I know that we've said it a few times. When you see the 2 words I am, and especially in John, what does that connect to in the Old Testament? What's he saying? He is God, okay? John 8:58, put it right there. The I am sent you. So right now, he's using the same phraseology, okay? I am, and in this case, he's putting God, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman, or is the vine dresser. Now, what's a vine dresser? You ever see anyone put a dress on a vine before? All right, it's care of them. All right, and so verse 2, then every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. So what's verse 2 about? What's John 15, verse 2 about? Yeah. Right. Okay. And now I am not a gardener at all. Okay. In fact, the last time I was entrusted with a garden, we had a mysterious tree pop up. I didn't know where it came from after I was there for a year. And it was a big weed that grew about 7 feet tall. So I am not a vine dresser. Okay. But what's the job of the husbandman or the vine dresser in this case? What's God doing? 2 things mentioned. he's pruning. What's pruning? When do you prune a plant? Depends on the plant. Okay? Time of year. Okay? So during the spring, what do? Fertilize it, collect all of the dead, make sure that it's ready to grow for the spring. And then in the fall, when you prune again, what then do you do? What are you taking off? The dead stuff. Yeah, going to get it ready to go back into hibernation, dormant. Yeah, but ready for the spring again. It goes through the whole process. So you do it twice a year normally. So right here, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. Okay, and takes away implies that it has already fallen to the ground. Okay, because correct, because it's dead. Exactly right. He's taking it out. That's right. So it implies it's already dead. It's already fallen by the wayside there. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it that it may bear more fruit. So then it comes into the question then, on a personal matter, is in your life, is God taking you out or are you being pruned? Sometimes we have trouble differentiating what that looks like. Sometimes, you think about Revelation 2, where Jesus says, I will remove their candlestick because they're dead. They're no longer a loving church or a sound, faithful church or whatever may be the case. I'm going to take away their influence. I'm going to take away the candlestick from that place because it's no longer mine. And then on the other side now, though, is that when you do prune it, you're hoping it's going to have more growth. Now, obviously, we would like everybody to be a fruit bearer, but that may, in this case, require that sometimes there's suffering goes along with it. Go ahead. Correct.
Some of the branches are so far to the point where they can't produce anymore. So he just cut them off of the plant. And then some are still growing, but they got bad parts on them, and he just cut them.
Correct. Right. And so it comes in is to which one is he doing to you? Yeah. All right. So then he goes into verse 3, as was already read. You're already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. So what's verse 3 talking about? You're already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. What word is this? Yeah, it is. It's the gospel. Okay? All right. Now, there's an interesting side note there. If you were to look in a concordance and you go to your concordance or to the internet and you look up the phrase because of the word, there are 4 different times or 4 different ways that phrase is used. And it's used as a command, 2 Kings 1:17. It's used in a way of prophecy, 1 Chronicles 22, verse 8. It's used as a word of strength, 1 John 2, verse 14. And then in Numbers 15:31, the Bible says, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment, that person will be utterly cut off his iniquity shall be on him. So that's a word of judgment. Now, when you look at this verse, though, which one do you think this would go into? Would this be a word of strength or a word of judgment, particularly? You're on verse 3 of John 15. That's where I'm at. Yeah. That's why I don't know where you're at, but I know where I'm at. Now we're in John 15, verse 3. A word of encouragement? Yeah. Yeah. Strength? Yeah. I think it's dealing with the positive. Okay, because you're already clean because of the word which I spoke unto you. And so, because of this, what do? Verse 4, abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am, verse 5, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. Verse 6, if anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. And they gather them, verse 2, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this, verse 8, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. Okay. Now, does everyone have the word abide there in verse 4? There's another word that's translated that I think is a little bit closer here. Does anyone have the word remain? Yet remain? All right. To me, that makes a lot more sense for us in our English-speaking world. Remain with me, and that's and abiding means to dwell with. Okay. Now, when you look at this, there for the word abiding here, who is doing the abiding? It's mentioned 11 times in verses 1 through 17 of John 15. You think about it as remaining. Also, you see verse 9 there. Gives a similar idea. Make your home with me. And this is inside of the Greek. It's in the second person class. So it's talking about y'all. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to do it justice here. That this section is dealing, because this is still the same discussion, dealing with the apostles. Okay? So we lose it in the English. I'm going to try to bring it up in the Greek and try to help us all connect the dots together best we can. So there's going to be several times when he's going to use a word, and it's going to be talking about them, the apostles, and then he uses the same word and talk about us, and we're going to be the proverbial they. Okay? You know when you have somebody and you say, they told me this? Who's the they? I don't know who the they are. Okay? Well, in this case, we're going to talk about us, and we are the they. Okay? So, in verse 4, this is dealing with the second person. First is, me, myself, and I. First person. Second person in our southern vernacular is y'all. And the third person is them or they. Okay? So, this is now going into the apostles. But by extension, we'll see it's going to go into us here in a moment. Okay? So, he said, apostles, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear much fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. Okay. Now, this is talking about the apostles have to stay with Jesus, which we know that that they don't for a short time. And they all leave. Mark 14, verse 30, where it says, and they left. Okay? So there is a point in time when they leave, but yet he's saying right here, remain in me. And by doing so, what's going to happen? I'm going to be with you. Okay? And unless you, and without me, you cannot bear much fruit, unless it, and that says, and this abides is this is more of an action word, not a personal thing. And that's why I'm trying to differentiate, because this can keep, because when you look at it, abide, the very first word, abide in me, is dealing with a person, the action taken by that person, and then abides is dealing with the action I'm giving out. So it gets kind of funny here. Okay? Unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. So that's now action taken. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides or remains has it, and that means has his home in me. And I in him bears much fruit, for without me he can do nothing. And then the bears fruit there is dealing in a general sense. Okay? So when you are being very specific, okay, and in this case, they have to be with the apostles. I mean, that's the apostles have to be with Jesus in a very specific sense. But by doing so, they affect the general audience. Okay? Which we know that. We call that the Great Commission. So, we're beginning in John 15 to get into more of a worldwide scope to evangelize. And it goes into us that the closer that we are to the Lord himself, and the stronger we are in our faith in him, the fruit that we bear will be immense. And we know from other verses that some will bear 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. And that's Luke 8 there about the parable of the soils. And so when you look at this, then we're beginning to get some foreshadowing of the Great Commission. Okay, so this is beginning to be an evangelistic terminology beginning to form here. Now, what do you think he means here? That for without me, you can do nothing. But you can do something. So why is he saying that unless you're with Jesus, you're a paralytic? What does he mean there by you can do nothing? What do you think? Yeah. Right. And do nothing on your own? Anybody else have a...
Life is only in Jesus.
Okay. Life's only in Jesus.
So if you don't have life,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, several times in your Bible, there are individuals, and I'm thinking of strictly New Testament here, okay, where it says that through selfish ambition, somebody will preach Jesus to serve their own belly. That's in Philippians 2. Okay? Now, the question comes in then is they're still preaching Jesus, but the motive is all wrong. It's all out of whack. And then that will affect doctrine. But when you think about right here is, as you said, without him you can do nothing. You know, I think this is a thing that we constantly consider is how can somebody, and we say this all the time, how can I want to use the word very loosely here, okay? How can a church who does not abide in Scripture be so large? And we call that a blessing. You know, that church, and we always say, well, you know, they must not be teaching the truth the right way, because if they were, they wouldn't have the crowd coming. You know? And that's a myth. Because there are churches of Christ that are very sound, very solid, that also grew very, very nicely, and they preach truth the entire time. So you can preach it, and that's what, and we can have growth. But sometimes we think about it from the standpoint of, they're doing something, and sometimes you can, you may even use a phraseology. Well, even the devil quotes Scripture. He did, yes, he did. Matthew 4, he used Deuteronomy 6 3 different times in that verse, in that section there, Matthew 4 1 through 11 there. But right here, I think it's dealing more not with doing nothing in your life. What I think it's dealing with is that if you want to see results of your work for good, if you want, and I think this also goes into the idea of prayer, which we'll go in there in a minute and bring up that. But if you want to see the good happen after the pruning, after you've gone through a time of suffering maybe, and you come out stronger in your faith, after that, you can now help somebody else. 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 5 goes into that more in detail there. So to me, it's talking about that if you desire to really, and these are the disciples of Jesus. Okay? These are the guys whose whole life they have left everything aside. John 1, they went and followed him. Okay? Some guys left the boat mid-action with a net in the water. Matthew left literally money on the table, and he left. And it's all because there are different mentalities about how you follow Jesus and what brought you to Christ. But if you want to see a result of that faithfulness of following Jesus, you stay with him. And if we want to see a time of hurt and harm, we can merely pretend. But this verse is saying that without him, you can do nothing. So those results that we may get are not going to be actual results. It's just going to be more about, I'm going to draw a crowd instead of we're going to make Christians or make disciples. Okay? So I think he's trying to drive the point home here to them that if they want to see the kingdom grow, if they want to see the church flourish, they got to stay with the gospel. They have to stay with Jesus. They can't do anything outside of that and expect it to grow and to flourish. They have to stay with the gospel. Okay? Chorus, and then I'll get to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it said, I will remain united to you. So that's a connection there. And then if they can bring, cannot bear to provide. So basically, if we're not connected, we can't even pruned because we're not properly connected. And then it says, it can do so long as it remains in the vine. So we got to be connected to that vine, just for us to produce, to grow after. So that's how we grow, staying in the word. In the same way, you cannot bear fruit unless you remain in me. And then the verse of the say, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will bear much fruit. For you can do nothing without me. So he said to go there. You got to be connected to me to even bear the fruit that's coming from the word. Because God is producing that fruit through me to you.
Right. Right. All right, Ted, what you got?
So I believe that the connection has to be there, but also he's giving them that information, but you also, to me, you have to put it in work.
Right.
You can have all the knowledge you want to be, but if you're not doing any work, what does it matter if you have all the knowledge?
Right. That's right. That's right. Very good. Very good. Very good point. And yeah, very good. All right. Any other comments there? Okay. Well, very good. So, in verse 6, then, if anyone does not abide in me, now this abide is talking about they. Okay? So, the first one, verse 4, is talking about them. Now we are the they. Okay? This is abide. And your English probably has the word anyone in there to differentiate the two. Okay? All right. So, if anyone, the they, does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. Now, this the one. Okay. Now I want to tell you this. This is just I found this little thing this morning at like 1:15. Okay, so I stayed up very late because I caught wind of like a dog with a bone at like midnight last night when I was going over this lesson. I thought that's really interesting. I feel like in verse 6 there that and the New King James does it pretty well about the cast out and throw. But to me, does everyone have a word thrown in there? If it was thrown out, you got it. I know it's in the ESV and the NIV there. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So that's so now you have different tenses. How about that? Active and passive. Don't worry. So if anyone, and I feel like this one does the best job of it, just because it makes sense to me. And the Christian Standard Bible, if anyone does not remain in me, he is thrown, passive, they are thrown. He is thrown aside like a branch, and he withers. They gather them and throw, active tense, them into the fire, and they are burned. So when you look at verse 6, though, what's happening? Who's throwing who out? Is this a verse dealing with membership? What's this talking about? Who's throwing who out? If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. Who's the they throwing them out? Ted, what you got?
What I get from if they don't decide to turn to Christ, then they're gonna have eternal, hell for them, so they're gonna be burned. At least that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
If you don't accept it, if you're in Christ, but if you're not, then that's what's gonna be your eternal punishment.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have a speculation on the they and the them? Ted summarized the verse very well for us. Who's going to throw who out? So it's going to be the fruitless one, right? The one that's not abiding in me is cast out as a branch and is withered. Okay. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. Now, in Matthew 24, this is seen as a sister verse to, because, the Bible is its own best commentary, where it says that the angels will be the ones in charge of, by God's command, to throw people into hell there, to the lake of fire. So it's believed that the they here, because of that, may be the angels, perhaps, that they may cast them by the command of God into the fire here. They are burned, perhaps. But so when you look at verse 6, also it's dealing with the fruitless life, the one that does not make its home in me. Now look at this. In verse 6, the first word of my Bible anyway, it says, if anyone. It's conditional. Okay, this is not dealing, inside of John 14, that's why I'm going to bring it up. Inside of John 14, there's a lot of stuff that once saved, always saved, people really like. Okay? But inside of the context, that is not at all the case. And notice inside of this verse now, if anyone does not abide in me, that's now setting a condition. So that means that there is a goal and aim, what we may say is our responsibility to remain in Jesus, but no one's going to do it for you. We all understand that. Okay, faith is personal from that standpoint. And so, by pushing aside personal accountability, and I'm no longer being fruitful in the kingdom, I'm no longer bearing any kind of fruit of any kind, this is now, I think, dealing with that individual. And so if you abide in me, verse 7, and my words abide in you. Now, it's interesting here that he puts aside of difference, that it shows a loss of focus in verses 6 and 7. Okay, because in verse 7 it says, if he does abide in me, and my words abide in him. Now, when you consider what that means, and my words make his home, abide or remain in him, then you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. So now this is dealing with the aspect of prayer, about the word ask. That's phero, P-H-E-R-O, and that's the idea of to beg or to plead. In this case, it's actually seen in the middle tense. I really enjoyed Greek this morning at 1 o'clock. But that means to request, make a request in prayer, Matthew 21, verse 20. And so this means to really make a claim on something, okay? Because it's there, because I know it's there, I'm going to ask, and then it'll be done for me, okay? So this asking here is not just a blind asking in the air. This is, and when prayer, when you're asking in prayer, we ask in expectation that we know it's there, ready for us. But unless you ask, you're never going to get there. So, with these apostles now, and I think this now goes into, I think now he's changed voices, okay, from them, the apostles, and now he's dealing with the general audience, okay. Verses 6 through 8 here. Because the you there, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it will be done for you. So now we're dealing with this mentality of being a disciple of Jesus as one that knows where wisdom is, and it's not in the student. You don't ask your students in class to give their wisdom on things that you know as a teacher. You're there to teach them. Now, sometimes, there may be certain cases where you may have an interesting student, may know a lot more than what they probably should for their age, especially for the younger kids. And so we understand that. But this is, I think, dealing more with the mentality, though, of interest. 6 to me says, I've lost interest. 7, though, says, if my life is still founded upon and still rest upon the words of our Lord, then prayer will not be hindered. Okay? Therefore, whatever I ask, plead, beg, whatever I ask, lay claim to, it will be done for you. Okay? By this, my Father is glorified, verse 8, that you bear much fruit, so that you will be my disciples. I'm going to say think about this, about the word that you will be my, that you will be my disciples. Your version may have the word prove, that you may prove to be my disciples. Another translation there might be the word become. And I believe from the Greek, instead of the word will be, it should be become. Okay, that you will become my disciples. And that's the idea of action taking place to become something. 2 Peter 1, verse 4, Matthew 18, verse 8. Nope, verse 3. Verse 3. Matthew 18, verse 3. Okay, now, at what point is the Father glorified? And at what point will we become disciples? You see it in the previous verses. What do you think? When will you glorify God, and when will you become a disciple? According to John 15, 1 through 8 here. Bearing fruit. Yeah. A tree is known by its fruit. You think about Matthew 6, I think it's verse 20, how it says a good tree cannot bear what? Bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear. All right. So, you're known by your fruit. And what kind of fruit are you bearing? I think there's 2 different kinds that's not specified in the verse. The first kind, I believe, is dealing with, again, in a sense of evangelism. I'm bearing fruit. We call that, you're going to go, Luke 10 says, go out into the harvest, for the laborers are few. So you pray for God's laborers to the harvest. It could be that one. I think it's definitely factored in here. But also, I think it could be dealing with the fruit of the Spirit within a personal Christian life. Galatians 5 there. And so I think it's dealing with both. Because sometimes, and I'll tell you this, I know a guy. I know a lot of guys. I know a guy. He's a real individual who bears a lot of fruit in the realm of soul winning. He's really a good worker. But his personal life, to me, every time I've known the guy for the past 15 years, says I don't have any fruit of the Spirit in my life, which I find kind of interesting. So this to me is saying that you have both. Okay? And so I'll tell you a funny story about this guy real quick, though. I was with this guy one time. We were door knocking, and this lady, we heard her. She was coming like a rhino down the hallway, man. She was like, it was really loud, and she was screaming and yelling, and that door flung open. I went to the side. I let him take the heat. Man, I'm like, he's like 80 years old. You're going to get this, man. I'm not going to be here. And she got right in his face, and she was screaming and yelling. I'm like, what has happened to this lady? She is really offended. We are at her doorstep. And I'm another lady. Never met her in my entire life. And she thought we were the Mormons. Nope, we're not. And the last time that the Mormons came to her house, they woke up her baby. I said, when was that? That was 7 years ago. Are you kidding me? She was really angry. But I'll let that guy take the heat, though. Okay, but anyway, that's my story I tell about him all the time. But he has a lot of connections in Texas, so I won't name names. But anyway, there's, but some people, though, may not be the best Christian, but they may bear fruit. But to me, if you're going to be a good Christian, you have to have the fruit of the Spirit yourself and be able to work with people. Okay? You can't be a grumpy grouch and expect to have anything happen. So I think this is dealing with both standpoints. Okay? So, verse 9, and this is another funny one that, I say funny, it's not funny, but another interesting one that you find in the Greek, you won't find in the English, but I'll point out to us because I'm really excited about this. This is the one that really got me going at 12 of the night. Okay? And actually what I did is I got this verse, and I worked my way backwards because I thought I missed something. But anyway, so it says, as the Father loved me, I also have loved you, therefore abide in my love. Okay, now we're beginning to get more of a concrete demonstration here on what this disciple now does. Okay? First thing, verse 9, what's talking about? As the Father loved me, so what? Okay? I have also loved you. Now, therefore abide in my love. Okay, this is what I got. The word love here is, I'm going to give you some Greek. Don't worry, I'm going to explain it. Okay? Is in the present active indicative singular person. Now, what is that? I'm lost already. Great. That's what it means. Because of how it's tensed, it's showing that his love is already a completed thing. Okay? Which we don't see that at all in English. So right here, because of how it's saying, I also have loved you, I also have loved you, that's showing a completed action of love. So when do you think that action is completed? At the cross. So already he's beginning to show, I'm here out of my love for you. I'm going to complete this. I'm here for a complete purpose. But I think we lose this in the English because this, I also have loved you is dealing with a completed action. Therefore, abide in me. Because of what Christ says, because of what I'm going to do, going to the cross. Therefore, what do? You make your home with me. You abide with me. You live with me. So therefore, we then go in to say that Jesus, he's essentially telling them, therefore, Jesus is saying, I am your life. And then you get back to verse 1 and 2 of our text. Okay? Okay. My time's up. So I'm going to stop. But, so next week, we will start in verse 10, and we'll carry on from there. Thanks a lot for being in class today. I appreciate y'all very much.